But you play in the same wonderful world-leading orchestra.
We do. The marvellous Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam.
And are you able to actually play together at the moment? Like, are you doing some concerts during COVID?
We are playing a lot of concerts. We had last week we had our first concert with an audience in, I think, about 6 months. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dominic, but
no,
I think
right.
about 6 months that we've done concerts to cameras, just live stream or delayed live stream or whatever you call it. So it was great to have people in the hall who'd all had to be tested, and they had to prove that they'd been tested, show a certificate and their ticket to get into the hall. But it was wonderful. I mean, it was a very strange experience. At the same time, it felt completely normal, and at the same time, so special. And my brain was sort of flipping between the two sides the whole evening. It was just great. Great.
Yes, you do. Do you find now we're really finding the true connection and the meaning of music when we haven't been able to do it for a while?
Absolutely. I had a theory before COVID struck that there were basically two kinds of musicians. There were musicians who loved rehearsing, and their concerts were a sort of necessary evil because, you know, to get paid at the end for all that rehearsing. And there were musicians who loved concerts and the rehearsals were a necessary evil. That theory is rubbish, because I would have put myself in the category of I love rehearsing and I go through such trauma to perform. I mean, not that I don't want to, but I have quite a lot of you know, stage anxiety and so on. But you know, you've got to do it. But I have so missed audiences, so I realised that theory is absolutely rubbish, and I really missed audiences and connecting with other people, listening to, you know, the story that we're telling.
That's wonderful.
I couldn't put it better myself. except this is where Emily and I differ. I hate rehearsing and love doing gigs. But that's what makes the music world go round. Because then when Emily and I get together, of which we have on plenty of occasions, you know, you've got the two things in the room, and eventually you get to the gig at the end of it. There's no doubt about it that playing to a camera, you can have enough of it very, very quickly. And I've found, without wanting to tell tales out of school, that I think the orchestra has reached its limit probably of how exciting is it really to perform to zero feedback from anything. I mean, occasionally you get a cleaner walking in during the recording, and that's the most exciting thing that happens. I think we're able to get up to a very, very high level just through our own self-discipline, but that bank is the credit in that bank is running low, and I suspect that just this weekend of doing a live concert has filled that back up again, and then we'll be able to do another 3 or 4 live streams. It is our currency for sure. The vibe in a room is our currency, and anybody who doubted it will have been proved wrong this weekend. And you know, I was able to say that I did a solo recital. I wasn't with the orchestra, but of course I heard all about it. But I did a solo recital, and I was very happy to then, the next day I was teaching online, of course, and was able to say to my students, it's worth it, guys, it's worth it. Just keep going. I promise you, I've felt it again. And this, what we do really matters to humanity. And we're still just creating memories. We're still just entertaining. We're not prophets. We're like a good vicar who is able to preach the word of the gospel, which is our score, and the gospel is touching the hand of God. So and in between there, we're affecting people's lives. And that's much, much more difficult to do with a screen between you. There is something about the energy in the room. So I feel very positive right now about the future, even though there are no indications that this is going to happen again anytime soon. But the fact that it did happen, and I think there will be such a huge impetus in the Netherlands to get it going more.
Well, I suppose, sorry, you've just answered. One of my questions was, what are the most important character attributes that have contributed to your success? And you've both, in effect, answered it there, talking about your connection with the audience and the important things about music, and then at the same time the resilience that keeps going through the hard times, which is also self-discipline that's kept you practicing, I'm sure. I mean, I have to say, like, I should start this interview by saying that I've chosen you two because you are two of the most impressive on your instruments that I've ever met, like in both cases. And that's been well, it's a high performance thing, isn't it? Like, you just both shit up. That's good.
She doesn't get out much.
Yeah, I was about to say, Emily. Emily is.
Kind.
Emily is, but you need to improve your internet connection because there's literally 4 million videos better than I am. But that's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So how do you motivate your students to work up to that level?
I think it all starts from a passion, a need to do what we're doing. And I remember, as you know, when I was on the brink of going to either university or music college, I just knew that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. And that drive motivates you, you know, when everything's going swimmingly, when, you know, the concerts are coming in, when there's no COVID and you can play for lovely audiences every week. You know, no one needs determination, no one needs discipline in those moments because everything just sort of flows. But what you do need to be able to connect to quite quickly is that passion, that drive, the need to share your music when things are not going so well, whether that be, you know, in your life or on your instrument, or, you know, now we're going through this COVID situation, to be able to have quite a short connection to why we're doing it. And I think that is something that we have got in common, is that the passion. I can't think of a less flowery way of putting it, but it is a drive, isn't it? A hunger, maybe, to want to share the gospel, as Dominic so beautifully calls it. So I think, yeah, is that it's
an awesome answer.
It's not
Emily.
really answering your question, but it is. Sorry?
No, it's a great answer. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to take the baton from there and carry on. The way with regards
well, can I just
yes.
I was just going to say that I often get asked by 17-year-olds, you know, should I go into music or should I do something else? And my answer is always the same. You know, if there is something else that you're trying to, well, I could be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever it is, or a musician, do the other thing. Because you do need that sort of, connection to your passion. And if it's not a passion, I don't think that's something you can sort of generate in a way in yourself. I think it's got to be there. So I think the how do I motivate my students? I make sure that they have that passion before they start on a professional course. And now I'll let Dominic talk.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I've said to more students, put it in the corner, go and do something else. Then I care to remember, this is not for you. And I motivate my students by being completely 100% honest with them. And but I don't deal with kids at all. I stopped teaching under 18-year-olds a long time ago. I'm way too inappropriate. I swear too much. I mean, it's almost impossible for somebody with a sense of humor like mine to not offend large amounts of minors or their parents. It's just not possible, because the honesty comes with a a fair amount of insult. I mean, it is a tough thing, to be honest, but which is why I just steer clear of any danger, and I make sure that everybody's aware that they will be offended, and I don't care. I'm not here to blow smoke up your ass. I'm here to make sure that you get a decent career. And if you can't hear it from me, then, and I'm a nice guy, you wait till you meet the guy down the road who's willing, literally, almost in some cases, to run you over in order to get to the gig first, or like it has happened to both of us. And, but at the same time, my motivation is that I am a great example of somebody who really gets off on surrounding themselves by amazing people. And the worst thing about COVID is that I couldn't be with these amazing people, and the amazing people are the thing that stoked my fire. Because I mean, I look at somebody like Emily. This is not the first time that we've sat together and talked together. And I sit there and I think, well, if I'm not working as hard as her, I'm just not working. And that for me is the motivation. And so I always suggest that if you want to be a great musician, you have to hang out with a lot of other great musicians. That makes you better. So say yes to everything. And this is basically where our connection, Emily and I, have always said yes to pretty much everything. Because you just never know who you're going to meet, and it's worked out very well for the both of us. So it's staying positive, being honest to yourself, being honest to the profession that you're in, being honest to the people around you, and you will have the greatest existence on the planet ever if that is what you choose to do. If you're constantly looking over your shoulder for who have you pissed off, why haven't you practiced, you've not prepared properly, all of these things, it's such a fine line between success and disaster in our business that there's only really one way to look at it, and that's to be successful, and that means to be motivated, so moving forward the whole time. So if you're not in that frame of mind, exactly as Emily said, I honestly at this stage just sort of say, you know what, I'll happily carry on teaching you because I get paid, but I don't think you're going to be a professional bass player. And normally that if they're in any doubt at all, that sorts them out right there and then they go, okay, I'm going to prove him wrong, and then off they go, and then it's marvelous. So it's a sort of weird psycho games kind of thing. So that doesn't work under 18s.
I've often said that everyone should get a rejection from music college, and only the people that come down and bash down the door and say, no, I have to come here, let them in. Yeah. Because I think there is a sort of, you do need to be that excited and driven and motivated, whatever the circumstances are.
Well, there's also a theme that's not quite competition. I don't mean that, but there's a theme of surrounding by high performance, which would include at music college as well, wouldn't it? I mean, if you're studying at that level with a lot of people, just trying to, I remember going back from being in Australia to then going back to my old job at the BBC Symphony, and then they asked me to do a prom, and I remember walking into the stage at the Albert Hall thinking, oh, this was normal before, but now look at it, because everybody was lifting me up so much that I'd just forgotten how brilliant they were. Like if you do something like last night at the proms, Pomp and Cirque, and you've played it in a lot of other orchestras, and suddenly you get to the real one and everybody's so good, and you're like, this is good. But it's not just the performing, it's also the training as well, and practicing and surrounding yourself by good people. Presumably your teachers must have had a similar sort of experience like that. Did you were your teachers that honest with you about your passions?
And mine was 100%. Yeah, I mean, and I just going back to something that you said, Celia, about it's not only this whole thing of being surrounded by amazing people. I've told this story before many times, but I'm happy to say it again, that Emily is responsible for me being in this orchestra, and this comes back because she called me saying, we've got a space in the orchestra, will you come and audition? And so of course I said, well, if Emily's calling, then I'm basically in. I don't really have to work that hard. And I didn't get in twice. And it was only the third time that I thought, and she kept calling. So it's three calls, you know, come back again, have another go, that I suddenly thought, okay, I'm falling into this trap of I've got a perfectly wonderful career. I don't have to work this hard. But if I want to be with somebody like Emily and all of her colleagues, now my colleagues, then I have to work as hard as they have. And it's only when I got here that I realized that I was surrounded by people who might sometimes pretend they haven't worked, but they have worked unbearably hard to get here. And we all have. I've been very lucky that I've been doing a lot of interviews with the orchestra, and it's really interesting to hear everybody's story. And it's essentially the same, that they were basically born to do it, and they didn't really have a choice. And there are some key moments along the way, and it's normally the people that you're with. And if that happens to be your teacher, then you're extremely lucky to have a teacher who is, one, honest with you, and two, motivates you to be better. We've all had teachers, and this is a thing that goes along everybody's story as well, pretty much, that has had the opposite effect, and that's lit a fire inside. So I've had the teacher that says, Dominic, you're going to come to nothing. And at the time it hurts, and it's only a couple of years later you realize that that's lit a fire inside you that's actually got you motivated. And they've said it not to encourage you, but out of spite. And that, you know, that's the, and we've all had these knockbacks in varying degrees. I didn't get into the college, as Emily was saying, the rejection from music college. I didn't get into the college that my teacher was teaching at. So I then went down to London and banged on a door, and I want to come here. I mean, what Emily said is absolutely true in my case. And there I found a teacher who sat me down and just said, okay, you could do this, but you have to behave in this way. And there are 3 rules in the orchestral world. Don't be late, buy the tea, and don't smell.
Oh, don't turn around, maybe.
Don't turn around. There it is. Yeah, those are sub clauses. But the way he was told me that, I just thought, God, is it that simple? Even I can understand that, and I've lived by those rules ever since, and the various ones. So sure, in my case, I was very lucky to have a teacher who was absolutely fully motivating. Emily, sorry, talking too much.
No, not at all. My first 2 teachers both told me that maybe it would be a good idea to do something else. Not because I wasn't necessarily good enough, but, you know, because it's a really hard life. And I, you know, respect them, and I love them both dearly, and I take their advice very seriously, but I just knew I had to try. So it's the same sort of lighting the fire business, you know, someone telling me, you know, maybe I shouldn't do that, but I really, really want to. That was definitely a motivating, and then they're incredibly supportive, and they come to all my concerts in the UK, and they're absolutely wonderful. But I'm really glad that they said that to me. So it wasn't a given, and don't go into this with your eyes shut. You know, go into this knowing that it's a tough profession. It's hugely rewarding, fulfilling. You know, I consider I've got the best job in the world. But it's means that you're practicing 7 days a week, that, you know, your holiday, you have to get back a couple of weeks. Our season in August starts with l'après-midi. So my holiday will finish 2 weeks before the official holiday ends, because I'll have to be in shape for day 1, you know. And so there are things that you give up, but the rewards are so wonderful, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Oh, that's so good. And I think that I hope my in-laws watch this, who always used to be cross about me practicing on the holidays. They're like, oh, why don't you ever switch off? And I'm like, no, because we've got Ravel Piano Concerto in a bit. You know, it's not just the emergency practice, it's actually the wanting to practice as well. That's good.
Yeah.
So are you now, one of the things about Artaria is that I'm trying to also create a forum for us all, I mean, for us all to be teaching better. And because, you know, I want to keep growing in high performance, but also in how I can improve the words that I use or the guidance I use for my students as well, especially when I'm quite isolated here as well. So this is marvelous. And could you tell us a little bit about Netherlands Flute Academy? And that would be the perfect subject.
Well, I started, no, I'll begin a story in 2007 when I decided to leave my teaching position in The Hague for various reasons, but one of the main reasons was that I felt that the school was not there for the kids, but the kids were there for the school. And that's, you know, things have changed a lot and moved on, and thankfully that is not the situation any longer. But at the time I found it quite frustrating. And I remember my youth orchestra sort of experiences where I was so inspired. What Dominic was saying about surrounding yourself with people who are, you know, equally or if not more motivated than you. And I thought, how could I recreate that sort of wonderful youth orchestra sort of atmosphere at a flute course where it's, of course, it's competitive, but in such a positive way, and that everyone is encouraging one another to get the best, to be the best that they can be. How can we arrange that? Well, that's, you know, means starting earlier in the whole process, if you like. So focusing on pre-conservatory students. And then I thought, oh, but you know, the further down you get in the pyramid, the more people it is. How can I do that one person? And by chance, I met a wonderful businesswoman, amateur flute player, and we met, and we threw around various ideas, and we came up with the idea of this summer academy, and having two groups of students. So the pre-music college Dutch students, and post-music college young professionals up to the age of 30. And the two groups, it's a sort of peer learning within each group, but then the two groups inspire and motivate one another. And then there's the teachers who hopefully inspire and teach them, you know, some sort of proficiency on top of that. So it's a sort of three-way learning. And a few years ago, Dominic very kindly came and was our guest soloist. We always have a guest soloist in our last concert in the recital hall of Concertgebouw. And that is really a fourth way of connecting to learning from other musicians, another instrument. It's always another, it's never a flute player. In that case, it was Dominic, and you know, just the energy and the commitment that they bring to their part of the performance is also a huge learning experience. And we always do a little Q&A after the rehearsal so that they get to know the person behind the instrument and have a flavor of the human being as well as the musician. So that started in 2009, and unfortunately we had to cancel last year. And it's sort of grown from this summer course in various directions. We do a project, Art Root Collective, in working in refugee centres. So musicians coming from Syria, North Africa, wherever, are put in a centre when they come to the Netherlands, and we invite musicians from those centres to come together with a wonderful improvisation coach, and the kids spend, so there might be 15 or 20 young musicians from these refugee camps together with 5 flute players and from, you know, the Netherlands, who've had usually a very privileged life. And we put them together for a day or 3 days or 5 days, and they put together a program all improvised using the musical elements from, you know, whether it's Syria, North Africa, or whatever, and guided by improvisation leaders, workshop leaders, Geert de Kok and Maaike van der Linden. And they put on amazing concerts in the first instance, but it's such an incredible human experience. And we always ask for feedback afterwards, and I'm often reduced to tears reading the impact that it's had on people's lives from both sides. You know, you've had a privileged upbringing in the Netherlands, and you're confronted with someone who, you know, had a terrible journey physically to get here, is fleeing from conflicts and horrors that we can't even imagine. And yet you can communicate through music, and it's needless to say, it's from the refugee side. They also are incredibly touched, feeling that they're being seen and acknowledged for the musician they are. And they're not, you know, maybe they're not necessarily professional musicians, but they have this, somehow, this, it's a bit of a cliche, but they have this language in common, and they can share and build something together. So that's another spin-off. And we have a course for teachers, which runs through the year, getting together, because teaching can be, as you just mentioned, it can be quite an isolated profession if you're only you and your students. And we notice that teachers of their own bat maybe don't necessarily reach out and exchange ideas with other teachers. So we arrange a platform whereby they can meet and inspire one another, again, peer learning sort of platform. So that's taken off
Wonderful.
in all sorts of ways that I never dreamt of when I left.
Congratulations, that's a real legacy thing. That really is marvellous.
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
I'm going to come in there. Having seen it, we were talking about having your holiday ruined because you've got a big concert coming up. My holiday was ruined. What was it, 4 years ago when I had to play with the Flute Academy at the end of the summer, and because I knew I had to practice. We've all been lucky enough to be involved in sort of youth projects. But rarely do you go into one where you just know that they've got it nailed, that they're really doing exactly as they wanted to do. And that was the experience I had when I went into NAFLAC, was that these are highly motivated, smiling children who, I mean, the fact that they were playing the flute is unfortunate, but the fact that they were playing music is it was by far the bigger picture. Everything that Emily has said, it is, I've seen it with my own eyes. Been lucky enough also to make a record with it. It is true. It's really happening exactly as she said it, and this is a remarkable thing. And again, this collaboration thing. Emily is very sweet at saying that she couldn't do it without her partners, her business partners, and that's very real there as well. You have to be in the room with other people who are like-minded, who are also brilliant, and it's the same story comes back and back and back. And then you're teaching these kids that if you're in the same room with brilliant people, that will end up, the fact that we're speaking, the three of us, 30 odd years after we met for the first time, maybe something like that. Sorry, maybe it's just me. It was 30 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean this is how the world works. And Emily's. I've also been involved in youth orchestra projects that are not as well thought out, and the focus is on the kids, but it's Emily's is, and it's a real gem of the Dutch music world.
Oh, congratulations, really, that's wonderful. Is there a way that there are public things that you've got on the internet, YouTube channels or whatever, that we can share to our people? Because it's really important to me that the internet is linking us, as you say, we're all three talking, but also that that Artaria should become a sort of online forum to share things that anything either of you are doing, we will put it on, and eventually when we've got enough of our digital subscribers, but even so we've got social medias now, so you know, really interesting for us to see that kind of thing, and I expect there's public outcomes even if you don't want to, you know, put a camera in an individual lesson or anything like that. Love to have a look, you know, and experience it.
We always make at the start of the concert in the Concertgebouw, at the end of the course, we always do make a little film to summarize sort of a few of the things that we've done in the week, so that people realize, coming to the concert, know that it's not just a concert, that this is, you know, the it's not even the end of it's not even the culmination of a week's work on this program. You know, we've actually, most of the week is focused on individual lessons, masterclasses, small ensembles, you know, very little of which is actually shown in that concert. So we make a little film. So there are various films of that on our YouTube channel and on our website and things like that. So brilliant. And as Dominic mentioned, for our 10th anniversary, we made a CD last year. And that was my last concert before COVID, was the presentation of the CD, 8th of March.
Yeah. March.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's wonderful. I think that's an interesting thing you said earlier on about being surrounded by brilliant people, but trying to manage the competition element so it doesn't become a toxic thing. I had to go and adjudicate the Hobart City Festival a little while ago, and it's a massive thing. I had about $40,000 to give out in prizes. I was adjudicating bass players and stage bands and all sorts of things, and I was the only one. And we came across I used the word, because I've just been reading Ben Zander's book, I used the word contribution instead of competitors. So I was writing hundreds of times, thank you for your contribution, rather than thank you for your, you know, and it worked really well. It was a fantastic community event with all kids of all ages and things like that. So just trying to get away from that, because the whole point was a week of who's the best. And I didn't want all the others to go home going, I'm not the best. You know, to have a positive experience out of it. Congratulations.
I think it's you know, creating an environment where everyone feels safe and valued for what they can contribute, and maybe they're not the best flute player, but they are great at getting, you know, a quartet motivated, or, you know, choosing whatever their strengths are. We can all just acknowledging that we all learn from one another, and I think that's our system of education over the last, you know, centennia has been all too much. There's a master and the students in whatever, whether that's the classroom or in a masterclass format, and I think that's nonsense actually in the music world. I think we all learn from one another, whether it's the same instrument or a different instrument, or whether you're younger or older, we can all bring something to a course like that, and a situation like that, and just acknowledging that is important to me.
Wonderful. I've come out a little bit with the synesthesia now. I don't know if I ever talked to you about that before, but that's the thing that drives me, is trying to find the right colours, and it's all about intonation and flow in performance and everything. And if you're going to achieve flow in performance, then you need to be surrounded by brilliant people. It's just really fun. It's you know, I was a little tiny kid getting told off for it. I was playing my scales, and I was like, they were like, why have you got your eyes closed? And I was saying, 'cause silver. And then I got into big trouble because of that, because it's not silver enough unless you do. Yes, you do it. So it just.
Hang on a minute. I've just got to tell you a story that I whenever I hear the word synesthesia, it's easy for you to say. That I always tell this story that for those who don't know, Celia and I used to live near each other, and we would travel together in the car. And after a concert, we would get in the car, and we'd sit down and start going back home again. And I'd say to Celia, "So how was that for you?" And she'd say, "Yellow." And that was, okay, that was it. Depended on what music we were playing.
Yes, yeah. I'm trying to think what the yellow ones were now. They must have been in E major.
Oh, D major is yellow for me.
Is it? D, oh my God,
Yeah.
blue, no way.
You both have it.
No, I don't really have it, but I just sort of, in scales, I think in scales, so G major is green, and then D major is yellow, A major is orange, E major is red. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the lovely thing is we did a Cosley fan tutti in Melbourne a little while ago. I went over to Orchestra Victoria and they used unequal temperament forte piano, and the synesthesia went crazy. And I thought, did Mozart have synesthesia? Because the combination of colours all the way through it was just logical and perfect, and it was all the kind of green pastorally colours for the ladies' events and all. It was perfectly done. But there was a guy playing second clarinet who had synesthesia, and we argued and argued and argued the whole time because all his colours were different. But I do have a friend in Switzerland who is the former BBC second oboe, but in the 60s. And she said she has such extreme synesthesia that F minor tastes of lime and things like this. And it's incredible stuff. But our colours are the same. And I've never met anybody else who's she's like, yes, of course F major is purple. Of course it is. That's but you know, I used to have it really strongly. I mean, it was all around here and my eyes were closed, and the other day there were fireworks going off. But it is a real thing when it happens. But then I think as you get older, maybe it gets a bit more towards associations. I don't know. I'm searching for it. That's why I'm doing Artaria again.
Wow.
And that's why I like the colours and all these things. I mean, because De Rosenkavalier is just totally orange at the beginning anyway. It's your fault. You played a bottom-E, you see. It's all the... all bottom-E's are orange.
I don't have it, thankfully. Well, I don't know, thankfully, but I don't have it when I listen to music, but just sort of thinking of, I have it the most sort of, well, I use it as a teaching, sort of when I'm teaching, using the colour, you know, D major is happy, it's yellow, it's, you know.
Bright blue, yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Look, we have to cheer ourselves up with music as well, and with connection, and at least we've got the internet to connect us. I can't hop over to Amsterdam soon, but I would like to go to France because my parents are there. But it's been fantastic talking to you. And is there anything else you want to say on these subjects, such as why should more people learn classical music or enjoy classical music, let's say, because you don't have to learn it, you just listen to it, go to the concerts.
I do the whole preaching thing. I've already mentioned it, but it's weirdly enough, I'm doing a lot of these online things at the moment, and it is the best way that I can explain why classical music or art in general is important to us. And I think it becomes more important the older that you get. Your soul needs to be filled more the older that you get, but equally it's super important to that kids are exposed to it so that they're able to enjoy it later in life. And I really believe that somebody like Mahler, for instance, if any of us could write just one bar, just even the chunk, 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 chunk at the beginning of Mahler 4.
Yeah.
I mean, just the genius involved in just that. I would be very happy with that. I would die a very happy man if I could just come up with, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't I do that? So let's just assume then that these people are special in a very, very incredible way. And Mahler is the nearest we're going to get to the higher ground, whatever that may be. Maybe you believe in God, maybe you believe in whatever, but his score is the scripture. And maybe that's a Bible, maybe that's a Torah, maybe that's whatever. It doesn't matter. And our job as musicians is to tell the story that scripture is, because it's coming from a higher ground via this composer. This is the way I see it. So this is why we must always be respectful to the page. And when you see the great orators, the great religious leaders, the Martin Luther Kings, the Gandhis, these extraordinary people that are basically saying the same thing, they take people to a different place, and it releases them from their mundane world and they see something else. And that is our job as musicians. And so as musicians, it's a great thing to do, but also to experience that is a great thing to do, because it just takes you to a higher place. And that is why drugs are so important in the world, is because they're all trying to get to this higher place. I say, put the cocaine down and go and listen to a Mahler symphony. You'll have the same experience eventually. It's probably best doing both, but basically it's the same thing. It's taking you away, and that is why art and classical music is our form. But when you hear a great poem being read by a great reader, a great actor, it's the same thing. When you see an amazing painting that's been put in a space which is perfect for that painting, it's the same thing. It takes you to a different place. And that now is more important than ever before, that it just fills you full of stuff. In your case, it's color, but in my case, it's love. I just feel so much love that's coming from I don't know where. And it is a no downside experience. So why wouldn't you want to do it? Is the question. It takes a little bit of time to get there. You can't plonk Mahler 4 in front of a kiddie and expect them to understand. Of course not. So it takes a lifetime to get there. But what the hell else are you going to do? You may as well, in the same way that you've got a kiddie's Bible, you should then put classical music in front of a kiddie and let them discover it themselves. And eventually, which is why our audiences are generally older, although there is a very interesting statistic that yesterday in the Concertgebouw is the Sunday morning concerts. And these are traditionally for normal people to come. They're not your highbrow concerts, they're normal people. And this was the test event yesterday. And Flor, my wife, works for the Gebouw. So she has all the statistics on who's coming, who isn't coming, and whatever. I think it was 45% of the people that bought tickets for yesterday's concert were under 35. And they had to pick up the phone. It wasn't like, oh, should we go to a concert today? No, there were literally 1,500 people waiting to buy tickets, and they were the first in line. So I don't know what that says, but I think possibly it just shows that really everybody needs this. It's just that quite often we're so bloody busy in our lives that you get to a certain age, perhaps the age that we're experiencing now, where it becomes not necessarily something you like to do, but it becomes a necessity. And I'm so grateful that I was exposed to music generally, but especially classical music. But music, it fills, for me, that gap that normal life just can't fulfill. And that's why I think we should do it.
I would just add to that I think people, in the same way as Dominic said, you can't necessarily stick a Mahler 4, put a kid in front of Mahler 4 and expect them to understand. I think it's really, really important that children are taught the tools of writing music, of how music is notated, about the instruments, about what's going on. I mean, I always say the only sport that I enjoy watching on television is tennis, because my dad at some point explained to me the rules of tennis. There are other sports I don't understand. I don't understand the rules, so how can I get excited? I mean, football, I know that, the ball's got to go in the net at one end, but I'm not quite sure anyway. But the taking the time to explain the rules, all that a composer is to know when a composer is breaking them maybe, is really a vital step in the whole process. So not necessarily saying that everyone is going to be, able to harmonize a chorale or is going to want to do that, but having the tools of learning how music is built is an absolutely vital part for the whole listening experience, I think.
Well, I'm just just getting into that now, because you were talking about not teaching kiddies, Dominic, and also teaching the Flute Academy, and I'm developing a national primary schools program for like absolutely tinies, and it's an ensemble that will go around school, but it's only oboe and electric guitar, of course, because they're the two obvious instruments to put together. But we've called it chromesthesia because we're going to have a lot of things to do with color. But the idea is we're going to have improvisatory elements so that the children can take part in it and interact, and we can all make a piece together. And honestly, it's so much fun when you see people discovering how they can actually impact on the music. So good. I'm glad that we feel that we're doing good in the world by doing our jobs at the same time, and like you say, being totally driven.
But Celia, just to, if this is for also that teachers will watch this, I think it's super important that if like me, you realize that being in front of younger than 18s is not your thing, you should avoid it. It's and leave it up to the people that can really do it well, because there are so many. In the same way, I think what we see more often is that kiddie teachers are teaching adults, and it's really not that successful. And there are some that can do both, of course. I mean, actually most of them can do both. But I'm at the end where I just cannot connect in the way that you can connect with kids, and it's okay. Then just concentrate on the thing you are good at. And you know, you are missing out a very vital part of a child's education, but I'm actually making it worse. I really believe that. And so that's why I avoid it. I'm happy to come in for NAFLAC, for instance, come in, make a spark and leave. But to stay there for more than 2 hours, that's not a clever idea. And I now realize that, even though I've thrown away a huge possible financial benefit, for instance, it's just not my thing. It's too important, and it must. I'm very happy to see that there are some really amazing programs going on that inspire, and just the way that you say, I just can't do that. And so it's okay, I think, to say
it's
not
cool.
for me.
It takes us back to high performance again. Everybody improving in the area that they're focusing on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it would be marvelous to be taught by either of you, and anybody who is lucky enough to get the lessons should enjoy it. I'm going to let you make new cups of tea now.
Lovely to see you, Celia.
You too.
Thank you.
And you, Dominic. I see you a bit more often.
And honestly, I really enjoyed. You've really cheered me up now, so that's good. Go and have a lovely day.
Good.
We'll try.
Find out whether I have to go off to Rotterdam.
Yes, good luck.
Play tonight. No message yet.
More nice green sea cups, that one. It's a long.
Press end to the record so we can carry on chatting.
Okay, where's the